When taking meeting notes, do you end up with something like this or this? And you have to spend hours of streamlining and reviewing your notes afterwards? To turn that around, stay with me until the very end, since I'll share with you not only the importance of good meeting notes, but also how to actually take meeting notes in the most effective and efficient manner to save time, always be on top of your agenda, and to never miss out any of the essential discussions items anymore. So when I started working as a management consultant over 4 years ago, I was overwhelmed from the sheer amount of meetings and variety of topics that were discussed every day. So I started to make notes at work and simply try to capture every single word of the conversation. And yes, you've heard correct, every single word. However, surprise, surprise, soon this turned out not to be the best way to take notes. Ever since, I've been developing and enhancing my own note-taking approach with the goal to make it as effective and efficient as possible. By that, capturing only the essential actions and takeaways without having to spend hours of editing and reshuffling the notes after the meeting. Before jumping into my note-taking template, let's briefly look at the importance of having structured notes and a best practice to get there. First, you should remember that note-taking is most of the time not a super value-adding task, to be honest, but just needs to be done. And therefore, we should make sure to do it as effective and efficient as possible. And a well-thought-through note-taking technique will help you to spend as little time as possible on this task. Second, notes often serve as a point of reference on which everyone relies. So since most people cannot recall each and every word that is being said in a meeting, we rely on notes and minutes that should summarize key actions and takeaways. By having notes, you make sure to not miss out any important information and you can make sure to stay on top of things. Third, diligent and well-structured notes make you appear much more professional and organized. So being able to write well-structured notes and maybe even distribute them among meeting participants in no time, you will underline your competency and professional attitude that will be positively reflected on yourself. Now let's look at the most important elements that should be captured from every meeting. In our example, let's assume you had a meeting to discuss a contract for a potential client from the UK, where several people took part in the meeting, but you were responsible for note-taking. First of all, you should note the overall topic of the meeting and try to be as precise, but also as short as possible, such that you can recall the meeting just by looking at the title. So instead of, for example, just saying UK contract, rather say client XY, contract negotiation, UK market. Obviously, you should also note the date and time to always remember when the meeting happened. You might also want to include the day of the week. Sometimes this helps to remember meetings better, since often specific meetings are scheduled only for certain days of the week, such as team meetings that might only happen every Monday. In our example, let's just say the meeting was on Monday, May 3rd, 2021. Next, always list the names of the meeting participants and make sure to write first and last name. That way, you do not leave room for interpretation if there are people with the same first or last name. Quite recently, for example, I had a meeting where four Alexanders took part, and you can imagine this was sometimes quite a struggle. Especially when there are many people involved, it can also make sense to include the participants' initials, such that you can use them later in your notes when making references to individual people. In our example, let's just say there's J. Doe, JD, K. Wood, KW, and S. Parker, SP in the meeting. Also, it's quite helpful to include the positions and title of the meeting participants and if they are present or if someone is excused. Knowing the title might help to better understand comments or references that are being made from certain people. In our example, let's just say JD is head of sales, K. Wood is legal advisor, and S. Parker is regional head. Having transparency on actual meeting participants of the meeting and of those who did not take part helps in hindsight to know if someone was involved in certain discussions or should have been aware of topics that were discussed in that meeting. In our case, let's just say that there is John, PJ, the COO, who did not take part in the meeting. One of the key elements of an effective note-taking template are action items. This section just lists all of the to-dos that were agreed in the meeting, including responsible and due date. You might even want to sort the table by due date or categorize it by responsible. So let's say that JD has to clarify the liability limit until May 7th, followed by Kathy, who needs to finalize the contract and prepare it for signature by May 10th. Followed by action items, your notes at work should also include key takeaways, meaning the most essential things that were discussed or the most critical decisions that were taken. Make sure to stick to the most important things only and try to keep your notes as precise as possible. It always helps to stick with bullet points for key takeaways, such that you are forced to condense the message and make it as short as possible. So for example, instead of saying, in the meeting it was agreed that the contractual legal details are in line with business interests such that the contract can be signed off by all relevant stakeholders, you should just write a bullet that says, legal wording in line with business interests, contract okay for sign-off. So whatever you note down, just make sure it is precise, short, but can still be understood by a third person reading your notes for the first time. Of course, sometimes there is also other information that you might want to capture but does not fall under action items or key takeaways. Therefore, you can reserve some space in your note template and write down other useful information that should not be forgotten or are of general interest. The wonderful thing about this structure and approach to take notes is that it's universally applicable. First, for all types of meetings, and second, regardless of the format you're using to take notes. You can create such a template in Notion, as I did, in OneNote, in a simple Word document, or in an Outlook email template MSGS file. So if you found this video and the tips you've received helpful, make sure to like the video and click that subscribe button to not miss any further videos on productivity or career advice in the future. Thanks for watching and see you next time.